Hey there. I'm excited to announce this to you today. This is what you've been waiting for in your spiritual quest. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm finally ready to announce it that it's ready to go. It's the Grief to Growth Community Circle. Now, this is a sanctuary where like-minded souls are united in their journey through grief and towards personal transformation. It's more than just a place. It's a beginning. It's a commitment to growth and understanding. Here you're finding not just a community, but you're entering a circle of trust and depth. You're going to engage with interactive coursework. You'll dive into exclusive podcast episodes and partake in discussions that illuminate the path from mourning to empowerment. This is a realm where every question is honored and every individual's journey is validated. To be part of this exclusive circle, visit us at grieftogrowth.com/community or look for the chat icon at the bottom of every page on the main website. Remember that entry is a privilege because I want to ensure that every member is as dedicated and genuine as you are. You must apply to join, but the journey within is worth every step. So go ahead and join us today. Check it out, grieftogrowth.com/community, and I look forward to seeing you there.
Hi there. Welcome to Grief to Growth podcast. Your host is Brian Smith, spiritual seeker, best-selling author, grief survivor, and life coach. Brian believes that the worst tragedies of life provide the greatest opportunity for growth. Brian says he was planted, not buried, and he is here to help you grow where you've been planted by the difficulties in life. In each episode, Brian and his guests will share what has helped them to survive and thrive. It is his sincere hope this episode helps you today.
Hey, everybody. This is Brian Smith, your host of Grief to Growth, back with another episode. Today I have with me Lynn Russell, and I'm going to read Lynn's bio, and then we're going to go ahead and have a conversation, as always. For those of you watching on YouTube, there won't be a video of this, but you'll be able to get the audio. Lynn, it was Lynn's pleasure to research 2,500 near-death experiences. It began as research for Dr. Jeffrey Long's best-selling book, Evidence of the Afterlife, The Science of Near-Death Experiences, and it just kept going from there. In the beginning, Lynn had no intention of writing a book, but she was so delighted by what she learned, not only about what happens after death, but also about deep spiritual lessons that have been asked for centuries, that Lynn decided to write her own book. So in Lynn's book, The Wonder of You, What the Near-Death Experience Tells You About Yourself, she answers a lot of life's deepest mysteries that she learned from studying these NDEs for Dr. Long. So with that, I want to welcome to the show Lynn Russell.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, Lynn, it's great to have you. We had a little technical difficulty the last time, so this is the second go around, but I'm sure it'll be great.
Great.
So the first thing
forward to it.
First thing I want to do, Lynn, is ask you, how did you get involved with the near-death experience in the first place? What sparked your interest?
Well, what happened was that my grandfather died when I was around 8 or 9, and then from that I realized that everybody dies and that I was going to die. And so I was frightened. I didn't want to die. So I went to my mom, and my mother was an atheist. And so I went to her and said, what happens after you die? And she told me nothing. You just disappear.
Yeah, that's it.
I didn't want to disappear.
Yeah.
So that got my interest, and from that day on, I became very spiritual, and I started studying all the different religions of the world and different philosophies, and then that branched out so that when I had the opportunity to do this research, I was thrilled. This was perfect, and so that's what I did.
Okay. Well, tell me about the research you did for Dr. Long's book.
Well, Dr. Long owns the website NDE, which stands for Near-Death Experience Research Foundation. Mm-hmm. And in his research, he is asking people to send in all kinds of death experiences that they've had, the near-death experiences. And then there's a huge questionnaire that they have to answer. Mm-hmm. And so what I would do is I would take their story and read it, of course, but tear apart the questionnaire so that how many people had saw the light, and how many people went through the tunnel, and how many people had this kind of thing happen, and that. So that's how the interviews went. I did get an opportunity to talk to a few people directly, which was wonderful. But that was basically what Dr. Long wanted me to do, was to break it down so that he knew how many had each kind of experience during their death experiences.
Okay. Well, and just for our listeners, NDERF, it's NDE as a near-death experience, RF as in Research Foundation.org. And that is, I believe, the largest collection there is of near-death experiences. I've spent quite a bit of time there myself, and I know there's some very detailed questions in there. So I guess you're categorizing the data for Dr. Long.
Oh, I was so thrilled with the messages. In the beginning, all I was interested in was the death experiences, and just, wow, this is great. Mm-hmm. But as time went on, the deeper information was just thrilling, and that's what I concentrate on in my work.
Okay, so you began to, I guess, notice some patterns in there that were kind of universal lessons. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So, Lynn, have you had your own near-death experience?
Well, I did, but it was so small, I don't really include that in the experience. I had a significant spiritual experience that certainly changed my life. But in 1972, I was very, very ill, and I was running a high fever. And one minute I was in my body, and the next minute I was in a tunnel. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember going into the tunnel, just suddenly there I was. And there was this guide with me that was helping me through this. And I'm very confused because I can't figure out what this is all about, what's happening. I think I knew I had died. That information I did know, but I couldn't understand the rest of it. And I didn't understand this man that was with me either. Mm-hmm. Anyway, because he looked like a priest, and I didn't know any priests, so I'm not Catholic. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we were going up the tunnel, and just as we were beginning to see a prick of light at the very top, a booming voice came down and said, "Take her back, it's not her time." Mm-hmm. And so he said to the light, "But she died." And the voice said, "Take her back, she has much left to do." That was a long time ago, and mm-hmm. He's right. I did have a lot to do.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about this the first time we talked, and you were saying that it was such mm-hmm. a small experience, but I don't know that any experience like that is necessarily small. It sounds like it probably informed, your path from there on, don't you think?
Yeah, well, I think the thing that helped me with that mm-hmm. was that I realized that I continued on after death. Yeah. So that was certainly very, very important.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. I think a lot of us, it's interesting you mentioned at the beginning that, you were told that when we die, we just go away, that we just, we cease to exist. And I was interviewing Kelvin Chen a couple of weeks ago, who has written a book on overcoming the fear of death. And he categorizes people into like 4 different views of death. But one of them is that we cease to exist. And one might think, if you think we cease to exist, you wouldn't fear that. But it's a very human thing, I think, to want to go on, and we do fear that just snuffing out.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that is. I think it's like the fear of death it just goes together. It's almost instinct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it is. So you wrote this book, and you did all this research, and you got some lessons out of it. So let me ask you some questions about what you learned. So first of all,
sure.
Why are we here?
Well, let me just back up a little bit on that.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
In the beginning of my book, I start off by telling people about a very significant spiritual experience that I had.
Okay, yeah.
And that experience was 3 quick experiences, bing, 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 mm-hmm. that lasted probably less than a minute, but they were so deep, and it was 3 different days, completely different days, but they joined together. Mm-hmm. And the messages that I got from that experience or those experiences was that the oneness, that there is nothing other than one. There's just source, and that's all that there is. And that was the most important lesson that was within that. And then when I went to death experiences again, I kept coming against this feeling. Everybody would say, and this was almost universal, everyone would say, I feel like I was the part of everything, that I was a part of the universe and the universe was me. And that, again, was back to that oneness. And that is the bottom line, I think, is that there is nothing more than source. That source is our only experience being, and that's what, but source alone would be very boring. I mean, that's not, besides boring, it would just be if we lived in a vacuum, humans would not know they existed, I think. But of course, the source knows it exists, but anyway, but you want something more than just being. So, existing. So that's why creation happens, and creation is constant. But the only thing that Source had to create with was itself. And that's the love power. People who talk about their death experiences go on and on and on about this overwhelming amount of love.
Yeah, they do.
And that love is the power of the source that comes. It's like it flows out of it unwanting. I mean, it just comes, whether it tries to or not. It just flows like a river, and so it just splashes everywhere. So I think that we are love power, and I think the universe is also love power. That everything we know is created through the power of love. And so, why are we here? We're here to love, to give, to be, to just enjoy being and growing back to the source.
Wow. So this came from your research and from the spiritual experiences that you had. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, my spiritual experience just led the groundwork, and then the NDEs just put a cap on it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I've interviewed quite a few people that have had near-death experiences, and yeah, this talk about I just felt love, and everything is love, and even many years even after they have the experience, they find difficulty even expressing it, but they say that, as you said, everything is source, everything is some people use the word God, which is a loaded word, but for other reasons. And I think as soon as we put the word God on it, we feel like it's other. It's something other than us. And
that's right. That's wonderful, because and that's one of the things that I do when I give my talks, is to talk about that there can only be one oneness. There cannot be one and, because as soon as you do the and, you've lost the one.
Yeah. So we're here for source to experience itself, or why is it that we're here?
Well, I think we are here to grow back, and in the process of growing back to our source, we go through stages and we go through learning experiences. The other thing is that when we come here, before we actually come into the physical body, we make a goal or a plan of what we want to accomplish. And always that plan is for the good of the world. It's not an individual thing. And so it's our goal. That goal is very important. And so then what we do is we devise or make up or create, I guess is the best word, the life that would help us to get to that goal. And so we will look at everything, all the aspects, what country we live in, what nationality, what race, whether we've got, I don't know, intelligence is another one, if we've got a disability or not. we also design events and people, but not everything is already set in goal because we are a part of the source, because source is the only thing there is. We have 100% free will, so we can decide to do it in this lifetime or not. So nothing is written in blood or stone. It's very flexible.
Okay, so there's like an overarching plan that we have with certain maybe milestones or road marks. And we plan certain conditions that we come into, a nationality, our race, our gender, et cetera.
That's right.
But then we can kind of go free reign while we're here. We can kind of have our own will.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
We do.
Okay.
We have 100% free will here.
I think you touched on something really important there. I want to make sure we don't overlook that. You said the plan is not just for our own personal benefit, but for the benefit of the whole, or for the many.
Yeah.
Which reminds me of a series of book I read called The Team by Francis Key, which talks about, like, as we're incarnated, I think we tend to view ourselves as individuals. I'm here for me. I'm here for my growth. I'm here for my happiness. But I hear you saying it's not just about me.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there, something I want to tell you about today. My podcast platform, Buzzsprout, has recently made it easier for me to allow you to support me financially. Go to www.grieftogrowth.com/subscribe. That's grief, the number 2, growth.com/subscribe. And once you're there, you can sign up to support me financially. Now, you can do it for as little as $3 a month, or of course, as much as you'd like. If you do that, you'll get access to bonus episodes, and you'll see those in the regular feed. They'll have a lock on them. But when you become a subscriber, you'll actually get access to your own private feed, and you'll be able to listen to the regular podcast along with the bonus podcast for the subscribers. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for sharing the podcast. And I want to thank those of you who support me financially. Have a great day, and on to the episode.
The plan isn't about you, about us individually. The plan is for all.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think it's, we tend to, as I said, kind of view ourselves so individually and like, what's my plan? But, and we're so intertwined. I think about, like, in my case, my 15-year-old daughter, passed away 5 years ago. And, I'm like, okay, how does that fit into my life plan? But I have to remember, she has her own life plan, and my wife has her own life plan, and my other daughter has her own life plan, and they're all so intertwined.
Yes. And it's very hard to adjust sometimes, because I get asked over and over and over, how do I know what my purpose is? And if we're just being who and what we are and living life to the fullest, then we will come to our goal. It'll happen.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that people get really confused about when they hear about a soul plan. It's like, okay, well, what am I supposed to accomplish? Is it this job, or is it making a certain amount of money, or is it, what is it all about?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, and there isn't what it's all about. It's about being. And if there's a specific direction that you're supposed to go, you will go that direction, because that's of the soul. And the thing is that it's soul living this life, not our human body, not the ego or the personality. It's soul. And so soul will guide us.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, Lynn, ask me the question, and I'm going to put this question to you, why would I plan some of the challenges that people have? Why would I plan to be disabled? Why would I plan to, die at an early age? Why would I plan, poverty? Why would people plan bad things?
Yeah. Well, bad things, first of all, we need opposites. Because if we had duty and love and wonderful all the time, it would become boring, and we wouldn't grow. We wouldn't become better human beings, or give to the world in a better way. People who have been through difficulties become strong and they can give more because they've been there. So I think that it's very important for us to know that growth, it comes with pain. First of all. Secondly, which is not a nice thing to say, but if we go back and look at it after years and years, I've had a huge life. I tried to write it once and it was so big, I think I'm going to need 3 books. But the point of that was the learning that I have gained now at this end of the world of my existence. I'm just so thrilled with the strength and the goals and the wisdom that I have gotten from my experiences in life. So I think that, and it's also there to give. So when I experience, then I can give.
Yeah. Well, you made a good point there about wisdom, right? Wisdom doesn't come from just sitting around being happy all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So, we go through these things and we have these difficulties, and that's kind of the way, humans grow. And one thing I would also like to add is, difficulties provide an opportunity to serve. If everybody had everything they needed and there was no need or pain or lack, then we wouldn't have an opportunity to serve people.
Yes, excellent point. Good point, Brian.
So, let's talk about some of the things that people think about, the afterlife. And one of the things, I grew up as a Pentecostal Christian, and I was taught about there's God who's out there, and God created me with original sin, and God was going to punish me if I didn't repent, eternally, for example. So, what have been your observations from talking to people in their death experiences about things like hell and punishment?
Sure. Well, one of the things is that they have taught over and over and over again is that hell or the negative experiences that they have, they've done it to themselves, because no 2 death experiences are alike. We are creators. We are creating this existence that we're presently in, this lifetime, and we're also creators of our next existence, afterlife. And so during that existence, now just a minute, my brain stopped. I'm sorry, Brian.
No, take your time. It's okay.
Yeah, what was the question?
So we're creating the experience we have here, and you said we're also creating the next experience, which is something I think people don't. I mean, they think, okay, I die.
Yeah.
In some place that someone put me in.
That's right. And so we are perpetually creating, always. We never stop creating because of our connection to the oneness. And so we choose ourselves to go to a negative existence, the hell or whatever punishment that they think. People do that to themselves, and that is the big message over and over and over again from people who have been there and come out of it. And that's the other part, is that people who go there, as soon as they ask to be removed, they are instantly. Some kind of guide or a hand or something will take them out of that existence, because they don't realize that they are creating it themselves. One of the reports that I read that really touched me, because we are source, and we have to keep that in mind, this person was going through the tunnel, and he could tell that there were souls within the tunnel as well. And so he said to them, well, why aren't you going to the light? And they responded that their religious teaching had taught them that they weren't worthy, which is, I think, probably the saddest thing, because they can't go back to their own source.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And it reminds me, I'm sure you're probably familiar with Howard Storm's near-death experience. Is one of the most, I've met him a couple of times, but he had an experience where he was raised as a Christian when he was young, but he had become, really atheistic. And in his own words, he said he was materialistic and like a really bad person. But when he died, He ended up being tormented by these beings, and they were like ripping at him and everything.
Yes.
And as you said, in his experience, the second he wanted to be taken out of that, he was taken out of it.
That's right.
And I've heard some people say, well, these negative near-death experiences, they saw hell and it's eternal. I'm like, it couldn't have been too eternal because they're back here. So by definition, they're not still there. So I think that's a really interesting thing when people claim.
Yes, exactly.
And I was talking, and PMH Atwater was telling me about some people she had interviewed that had near-death experiences. And one person had this hellish experience, and they stood up and they tell about how terrible it was, and then they said it was the best thing that ever happened to them. I guess.
Oh yes, oh good.
Yeah, they said it was the best. When they came back, it totally woke them up, and it changed their life.
Yes. And another thing that wakes people up, by the way, is if they're not doing their goal, sometimes they will be, they have a death experience, they will be asked, what have you done with your life? Mm-hmm. And that instantly, as soon as they're asked that, they instantly know that they've goofed off, that they're not doing anything to accomplish their goal. Mm-hmm. And so they come back with a very strong desire to get to it and to live life and be better than they were and care and love.
Yeah. They come back. I heard the description the other day. They come back almost like missionary. Not almost. They come back like missionaries, right? They've seen the light and they've been converted. They're not coming back with a religious message saying you need to do this or follow this person, but they come back and say, hey, wake up. Yeah,
that's true. It's wonderful. You know what? I think the world is changing based on all of this information, actually. I think that there's a huge upsurge in spirituality. First of all, because people had stepped away from the basic churches. But the other thing is that they are learning whole different kinds of lessons through near-death experiences.
Yeah, I want to believe that, and I hear people in this field telling me that, and I really, really hope that it's true, because I feel like as human beings, we've kind of forgotten who we are. We've let materialism, and I mean that in the sense of thinking everything is physical, and I think forgetting who we actually are. I think that's causing a lot of the problems in the world. So, and the thing about the near-death experience is, while we're talking about this, and a lot of people might not realize this, it's estimated that 5 to 10% of people in the world have had near-death experiences. So when you think about it, that's millions and millions of people that have had these experiences, but for decades, they were like shamed. No one talked about them. So
that's right.
I think what we're seeing now, as you said, is people are, they're writing books, they're speaking about it. It's becoming more common in our society, and people are starting to understand what the lessons of the near-death experience are.
Yes. It's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
Maybe, just maybe there's a rainbow coming.
So what do you think the afterlife is like? I mean, is it binary, heaven and hell? Is it, what's it like?
No, it's not heaven and hell. It's just being. It is whatever we create it to be. Now, some people will go to a garden where the animals and the flowers are alive, where even the water sends them feelings of love, and sometimes they see things that are almost from another planet, in the garden, like plant animals and flowers and things that just don't exist here. Some people go to cities. They see beautiful buildings made of gold and glass and silver and whatever, and so that's another thing. Another thing people will see is a bridge with water, and then there's this bridge, and they're on one side of the bridge, and they can see their loved ones on the other side of the bridge, but they can't go over the bridge, because if they did, they feel that they would cease to be, which can't possibly happen, by the way. But but that's their feelings about what's going on. But the big thing about all of that is that they constantly feel that they're a part of the garden, a part of Wherever they are, they become a part of it, including the universe.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi there. I'm really excited to tell you about my latest ebook. It's 4 lessons that you can learn from the near-death experience without going through all the trouble of dying to learn them. I've been studying NDEs for several years now. I am completely convinced that not only are they 100% real, but that there's some very universal wisdom that we can get from the near-death experience. And I've distilled that down in this book into 4 short lessons. And I've also given you all the reasons why I believe that NDEs are absolutely real. So go to www.grieftogrowth.com/NDE lessons to pick it up for free. www.grieftogrowth.com/NDE lessons. I hope you enjoy it. Wow. So, yeah, it's interesting. You talked about that bridge, and I know in a lot of near-death experiences, there's like a border, whether it's a bridge or I was talking to someone who had a near-death experience. She just realized there was like a curve in the road that she was, or the beach she was running on, and she knew she couldn't go around that curve. So the near-death experience, while I think it does inform us a lot about the afterlife, we have to remember these are people that have, like I heard someone say the other day, put it as they like saw the trailer of the movie. They just got like a peek, but they don't, it's not an actual death experience.
Yeah. So one of the things, one of the things that when I'm talking about just generally the death experience, there are things that everyone has. For example, telepathy is an automatic. You don't hear through talking. You know, it's brain back and forth. Another thing is that moving. All they have to do is think about being in another place, and they are instantly there. There's no time or space at the spirit level. And so that's a little confusing for us because we're so locked into time and space here. Yeah. So it's a little hard to get your brain around that one, but it's the way it is.
Yeah, I've been actually wrestling with it. You mentioned time and space. I've been wrestling with that concept myself because I'm studying, reading a book now on idealism, which is the notion that consciousness is all there is, and that the physical universe we live in rises out of consciousness. And so what this philosophy tells us is that time and space are an illusion or not real in a sense, I guess. So when we hear these things, these reports of the spirit world, you know, like I was talking with Peter Panagore the other day about his experience, and he's like, well, I'm telling you these things in sequence, but they didn't happen in sequence, but that's the only way I can convey it to you.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
The notion of
consciousness is the bottom line. Consciousness. It is so important. Quantum physics is realizing that we somehow, in a way that we don't understand, have an effect on particles. Quantum particles that somehow, in a way that we don't understand, we influence. We also influence our experiments because, just the fact of observing changes the observation because we are connected in some way. But the other thing is that studies have shown that we get messages about 6-7 seconds before we even know what we're going to be reacting to. And I believe that's consciousness. That's our connection to the source.
Yeah. That's all really, consciousness. It's a term that's becoming up more and more, which is also fascinating because it's the one thing that science has no clue about. They can't define it. They can't explain it. They say, well, it must have risen out of the material because the material is all there is, right? So that's what it all started with. And then they say, well, consciousness rose out of that. And then they're like, well, and then we say, well, how? And then what is consciousness and why should it be? And they can't answer that. And I actually heard Neil deGrasse Tyson, who everybody thinks is like the smartest guy in the world. I think he's brilliant. But he goes, since we have no clue of what consciousness is, maybe it just doesn't exist. And I'm thinking it's the only thing that we know exists. I mean, the only thing we know for sure is that we exist. I know that I exist. You know that you exist. I'm not even sure that you exist. All I know is I have an experience of you, but the only direct experience I have is consciousness.
And you may be creating me through your consciousness.
Yeah, for all I know, it could be. So it's we can get all caught up in this, and this stuff gets really deep. And my audience, it's pretty. I think a lot of them are tracking with me on some of these things, and some people I probably just lost. But the point is that we are by our very nature consciousness or source or God, if you want to use that word. We do create our existence here, and we co-create our existence when we go to the afterlife. And that's, I think, why, as you said, no two of the experiences are exactly alike. They have some common factors to them and some common lessons that we learn. Some people ask, well, why did Peter Panagore find himself without a body? He was just pure consciousness. But, Michelle Claire, my friend that I interviewed, she found herself walking on a beach. And, Sharon Milligan found herself in a garden, and they're like, well, they should all be in the same place.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's right. It's amazing, isn't it? I just love it. I think it's wonderful to know this and to realize how magnificent we really are, because we really are. We're just magnificent beings, all of us.
So, Lynn, some people say, well, the near-death experience is just an artifact of the dying brain. It's a lack of oxygen. Your brain creates this experience. In the research you did with people that had near-death experiences, did you find anything that proves that they're actually real?
Actually, I did. First of all, they come back with information they couldn't possibly know, and that's common. So they may see people while they're dead, and they will watch people doing things, or even their own family. They may see their children or their mothers or fathers doing things that they couldn't know about. Mm-hmm. Another thing is they may meet relatives that have been gone for a very long time, mm-hmm. and they've never met those relatives in real life. And so when they go back, they can talk about so-and-so and identify them in pictures without being told that that's who it is. Mm-hmm. So that's a pretty good thing. Another thing they can do is they come back with knowledge of somebody who has passed that nobody else knows that person is dead.
Right.
But they know because they've been there and they've seen them and they've talked to them. So that's another thing. But here, the thing that convinced me, because I'm a little bit hard-nosed, I have to have proof too. Mm-hmm. And so the thing that convinced me was the people who have been dead for hours and hours and hours. There was, there are a number of people. If anybody wants to go to NDERF and then in the search engine, enter rigor mortis, there are a number of people who come back to life while they're in the stage of rigor mortis, which mm-hmm. is like 13, 14 hours after. And that can't be the breaking down of the brain or the drugs or any of those other excuses that put somebody, But what we need is people to do more research on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you touched on some really good points there. And I've talked to a couple of friends that have had what they term veridical NDEs, where, as you said, they've got knowledge. And I want to make this clear to everybody of what a family member was doing while they were dead. While this person's laying somewhere, quote unquote, dead, they see someone out in the hallway of the hospital, or maybe even hundreds of thousands of miles away, and they can describe what they were wearing and what they were doing at the time they were unconscious. Yes. Or they'll talk about.
Anita Morjani talks about her brother coming, and she knew that her brother was on a plane coming. So how would she know that? She was dead.
And she's mm-hmm. a really interesting case too, because she had, and there's this NDE after effect. She had a miraculous recovery. I mean, she was supposed to be dead. She had her body was riddled with cancer.
Yes. Actually, there were a few people that have had that happen. Anita's the most well-known, but there's quite mm-hmm. a few people who have recovered from stage 4 cancer.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's really, really cool about the NDERF, because we hear these things and we think, oh, it happens to, a couple of people. Maybe it's real, maybe it's not, but it's actually a lot more common occurrence than most people really understand.
Yes, and people who have had death experiences, like, for example, I told you about my experience. When I came back, I was cured. I could get out of bed right away.
Yeah.
And that's the case. Very often people, they may not come back cured, but they will get better faster than anyone else would normally with that ailment.
Well, and they come back physically changed in certain ways. Sometimes their eyesight's better, their hearing is better,
Yep.
and they have abilities that nobody can explain.
That's right. They do. They have psychic abilities and another thing is usually, and this is sort of a strange thing, their personality, as we know, changes. They've just become completely different people than they were before. They're more kind and they're more caring and they want to give. But they also have a higher IQ. It's not universal, but it's very, very high up there, that almost everybody returns with a higher IQ than they had before.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So, Lynn, the thing I'm gathering from your book, I know not everybody's interested in near-death experiences per se, but I like the way your title even says it's the wonder of you. What the near-death experience teaches you about yourself. So this is not just about reading some story about this guy that died and saw angels and then came back. But I think what you're trying to get across in your book is, what is it about being human, what's common to all of us? Is that correct?
Well, it's that, but it's also to emphasize to people how beautiful they really truthfully are. People are so down on themselves. There's so much stress and worry and concern, and they get wrapped up in it. And they need to understand how beautiful they really are. That's my main message, is that you really are magnificent.
Yeah. Well, not to bash on religion, but a lot of us have been taught that we're not magnificent. We're these lowly creatures that don't really even deserve to be here, and not only by religion but by materialism, which is, I don't know, maybe even worse, maybe not, which is you're just a biological accident. There's this meaningless universe that doesn't care whether you exist or not. It only happened by happenstance and due to a bunch of really unfortunate, miraculous, frankly, chain of events. You're here, but you're only here for a few years, and then it's lights out. You go away.
Yeah. How can stardust become consciousness?
Yeah, it's actually extremely. I've studied some of the probabilities of our universe existing as it is, and it's impossible. I mean, it's as close to impossible as impossible could be, or as it could be without it being totally impossible.
That's right.
The fine tuning it takes.
And that's one of the things that I talk about. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know you said, and I haven't read the book yet, and I plan to, but you do talk about some of the science behind it too, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to understand that, because, as I said, you can have a couple points of view. One is we were created and we're flawed and we're worthless. The other point of view could be that we're just an accident and that it's all meaningless. I think the lesson is from your book is that neither one of those things is true.
That's right. Yeah. We really need to, because I think our jobs and commercials are really bad, because they're always telling us we don't measure up, that we need to get better. We need to buy their stuff in order to be better. So everywhere around us, we're surrounded with what we don't have, what we don't, so there's a lot of negativity that's coming at us. And another thing that is, maybe I should tap dance on this one. Let's just say that there's a lot of places that are making negative comments in order for us to listen to them, because they make the negative comment and then they say, but I can fix it. And so people listen to that.
Fear sells.
Too.
Fear sells. I was a professional salesperson for 25 years. I've owned my own company now for another, for 20 years. And the first thing you want to do if you want to sell somebody something is you have to convince them they have a lack, that they have a need.
That's right.
before you can give them a solution, they have to have a problem. So what near-death experiences are telling us, and what you're telling us, it sounds too good to be true, because what you're saying is, you don't need anything. You don't need to be better. You're just fine, and you're better than you think you are.
Yeah. And a lot of people who have death experiences that are very wealthy come back and get rid of almost everything, which causes problems with the marriage, because the wife might, or the husband, the spouse might be very materialistic, and that's gone. That's gone.
So, and that reminds, as we're talking about this, you were saying that, the commercials try to tell us we're not good enough. And that's, again, I think, because we think we are our bodies. So what does a near-death experience tell us about who we are in relation to our body?
That we're not our body. Most people who have death experiences still remain physical. They see themselves physical. They see a world that's physical. They hug each other and eat and drink and all of the physical kinds of things we do here. But they will, if they're there. So, how do I say this? Sorry, I'm stumbling. They will realize, some people realize that, wait a minute, I'm not physical, that I'm spirit. And then they will look at themselves in a shiny surface of some sort, and they'll see that their spark of light, that's their reality. Mm-hmm. And that then another thing that happens is they enter into the source. They enter into this beautiful, big, huge light that is just flowing love, love, love. And they go right inside and they become a part of the source. And that is mind-boggling.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. I'm just kind of, that almost makes me speechless there thinking about that, because, we're here and we are so attached to our bodies, because this is how our consciousness expresses itself here. And we feel like we can fall into this thing thinking that we are our bodies. So it's got to be a pretty wild experience when you step outside your body and you look back at it and say, hey, that's one of my possessions, but that's not who I am.
Yes, exactly. That's just a shell that held me for the period of time I was here. And I should mention, by the way, that we come here to be separate. We are here in a separate existence because at the spirit level, none of this is possible. We can't even wake up in the morning on the other side, None of what we do, getting into a car, driving, going to school, just being a human being, is not possible on the other side. So we really give a great deal from the second that we enter into this existence until the day that we're finished. We give a great deal.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing that we do, and I always have to use analogies because these concepts are too big, I think, to take on directly. But if you think about like a movie, if the movie didn't have an antagonist, a bad guy, if the hero never had any conflict, we would never go to see the movie. What would be the point, right? So
yes, exactly.
But we have to, on the other hand, this experience is very, very real while we're in it. And I really get a little bit annoyed when people say that life is just an illusion. It is in a sense an illusion, but it's real while we're here, and it's got real meaning.
That's right. And I know that my Buddhist friends, I love them because I agree with almost everything they say, but I can't separate myself from this existence because I'm here. And the fact that I'm here tells me that I'm here for a reason. I'm physical for a reason. So I can't drop my interest in anything other than being. Yeah,
I think you're right. I think, as I said, I think it's a matter of language, and I think it's taking a concept a little bit too far, like the idea that time and space are illusions. And I'm actually ruminating on my next my podcast I'm going to record, and I was going to challenge people to think time and space is an illusion to appear right next to me right now, because if time and space are an illusion, you should be able to do that. But
yes, that's right.
We do live in a physical world, and it's by design. It's not by accident.
That's right.
We're here
that's
for
right.
a reason, and but we're going to, we're only here for a certain amount of time too.
And there's a reason why some people ask me, why can't we remember other lifetimes or remember before we came here? I think if we did, we would not be able to function in this existence. If we remembered heaven, this would be pure hell. So, and a lot of people who've been there don't want to come back. They come back. And I had one woman after a talk I gave, she came up to me and she broke my heart because she said, I'm just making time. I'm just here doing what I have to do, but I can't wait to get back. So what a shame. I mean, she's here. So do what you can while you're here.
That is a great point. And unfortunately, there's a downside actually of having a near-death experience. We all think it's all great, but some of the after effects is a lot of them have trouble integrating back into this world because they do remember. Yes. And this world is so upside down and crazy.
Yeah.
And it'd be really easy to say, I'm just going to mark time, until I go home.
Yeah.
And that's not the point either. I mean, we don't want to tell people, there's actually a movie called, I think it was called The Afterlife, where they discovered like proof of an afterlife. And in the movie, the consequences was mass suicides because people are like, if there's an afterlife, I'm out of here. And that's not the lesson. That's not the lesson of the NDE. So while we're on that, let's talk about that. That's a really important subject. So if I learn this, why wouldn't I just take myself out?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, what happens is when people commit suicide, they're either immediately, if their body is able to continue to function, they're sent back. Because that is the one choice we do not have. And so if they can't be sent back, then they are given another life with exactly the same issues. And they have to relive that life and deal with the issue without suicide. Now, I've heard of, I'm a little skeptical on this one, but some people have been told that they can stay at the spirit level, but they have to go over and over and over the life that led them to suicide and think of a way that they could have gotten out of it without committing suicide. So the bottom line is you don't get out of whatever it is that you're trying to get away from.
Yeah, that's tough. I don't know about people being forced to come back, but I think maybe people choose to come back. Because if you had a plan and you didn't hit your plan, then I could see it be a natural thing to say, "Oh, I didn't hit my plan. Let me try it again." And I think we have to also acknowledge, this life is tough. It could be very, and some people, that's the old, theodicy problem, right? Why would an all-loving creator create such hell?
But you chose this life. Each one of us chose the life we're living.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard thing to accept. I know, I realize that. It's very hard, but we are responsible for this existence.
Yeah, that is hard, and it's I would call that a level 301 or level 500 course kind of thing where we're, for a lot of us that are just learning about okay, I'm a spirit and I chose to come here, and then you say, now you're telling me I chose this. But from a higher perspective, when you think, okay, everything's going to be okay. And I love this quote from John Lennon, everything will be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end. So
yes, that's true.
No matter what we're going through today or tomorrow or whatever, it's not going to last forever.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I do want to qualify my suicide points is that there are times when it's okay. If you've done whatever you're supposed to have done here, and say, for example, people are really ill or physically ill, I agree with assisted dying and that kind of thing. So, and also another thing that's classified as suicide on the other side is alcoholism and drug addiction. If you kill yourself through those ways, that's seen as, similar. It's similar. I don't know that it's exactly the same as suicide, but it's next door to it.
Yeah, but that's getting into another thing that's a little bit controversial, because I remember the movie No Solar, the Astral City, that was written by, I can't remember his name now, Chico Rivera. I can't remember the guy's name. He was a guy in South America that wrote this thing about the afterlife, and the character in it, they say he committed suicide because of the way he lived his life. So that's, I don't know if that might be above our pay grade to get into that, but I think, I think we can say, we do come here for the challenges. I think if you're on Earth, you came here for the challenges, and no matter how great your life might look from the outside, everybody has them, and
that's right.
When you get to know people, and you might look at them and say, oh, well, they have money and they have, this and they have fame. We all have our own challenges that we come here to face and to overcome.
That's right. Yeah.
I think hopefully learning this material will help us to overcome those challenges, to help us to be patient as we go through them, and maybe feel even a little bit more empowered knowing that it's a path that we chose.
Yes, and I really do think that we're here to give and be and learn to love, and to love as much as possible.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's not able. Sometimes the life that we're living just doesn't afford us that luxury.
Yeah, and I've heard some people say, maybe, we're a little bit ambitious. We're in the spirit world, and we think, oh yeah, I could do that. Let me, give me that.
Yeah, that's true.
and we bite off a little bit more than we can chew. And people, sometimes I think maybe feel like I need to hit the reset button. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, Lynn, I'm really glad we got to do this interview again. It's been great having you on. I'm looking forward to getting this out to my audience and getting a response to it. I do want to recommend to people to get the book, The Wonder of You, what the near-death experience tells you about yourself. And that's by Lynn Russell, Russell. And Lynn, where can we contact you?
Well, I'm on Facebook and I'm on Twitter under my name, but I also Art Soul 2. And I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Instagram when I remember to go there.
Okay, great.
I'm not good at getting there, but anyway, I'm there.
No, I understand. Well, Lynn, again, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you doing this.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
All right.
You have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I want to make it really easy for you to reach me. So just send me a text to 31996 and simply text the word growth, GROWTH. In fact, you can right now just say, hey Siri, send a message to 31996, and when Siri asks you what you want to send, just say growth. You can do the same thing with OK Google. Thanks a lot. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for listening to Grief to Growth. Brian hopes that you find this episode helpful and will come back for future episodes. Brian's best-selling book, Grief to Growth, Planted Not Buried, is a great resource for anyone who is coping with grief or knows someone who is. If you enjoy the podcast and would like to support it, there are 3 things you can do to help. The first is to share the podcast with someone that you think it will help. The second is to go to iTunes, rate, and review the episode. The third way you can support the podcast is by becoming a patron. Head over to www.patreon.com/grief2growth. That's patreon.com/grief, the number 2, growth, and sign up to make a small monthly donation. Patrons get access to exclusive bonus content and knowledge that you are helping to spread the message of grief to growth. For more about Brian and Grief to Growth, visit www.grief2growth.com.
Hi there. I hope you enjoyed this latest episode of the podcast, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. What questions came up for you? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? I invite you to visit us at growth2growth.circle.so. That's growth2growth.circle.so to continue the conversation with me and with other listeners. It's a space to sound off, to share reactions, and to go deeper into the topics from the show. I look forward to chatting more, and I hope to see you there.